The moment my husband said the words, I actually smiled. I poisoned you. It sounded ridiculous, like a bad joke delivered without a punchline. We were sitting across from each other at our small dining table, the same table where we had shared years of meals, arguments, apologies, and quiet understandings. The overhead light flickered slightly, casting long shadows on the walls. Outside, the neighborhood was calm. Too calm. "You're not funny," I said, reaching for my glass of water. He didn't stop me. That should have been the first warning. He just watched, his eyes fixed on me with an expression I couldn't read. Not anger, not fear, something emptier, colder. "I'm serious," he said quietly. I laughed again, but this time my chest felt tight. "Okay, enough. What's wrong with you today?" Instead of answering, he pulled out his phone and placed it on the table between us. He tapped the screen and a timer appeared. 30 minutes. The ticking sound felt unnaturally loud. "What's that supposed to be?" I asked. "About how long it should take," he replied. My smile faded. "Take for what?" He leaned back in his chair, folding his hands like we were discussing the weather. For the poison to fully kick in. My throat went dry. "Stop, you're crossing a line." "You already crossed one. You just didn't think I noticed." I stood up so fast, my chair scraped loudly against the floor. "I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm not part of it." As I took a step toward the kitchen, a strange dizziness washed over me. The room tilted slightly. I grabbed the edge of the counter to steady myself. "Sit down," he said calmly. "You don't want to fall too early." My heart began to race. "What did you do?" He finally looked directly at me. "You weren't supposed to see those files, the bank statements, the emails." My stomach churned, not just from fear, but from realization. Weeks ago, I had stumbled upon financial records that didn't make sense, large transfers, hidden accounts. When I confronted him, he brushed it off, told me I was imagining things. "You're lying," I whispered. "You wouldn't dare." He smiled faintly. "You always underestimated me." A wave of nausea hit me hard. My hands started to tingle, pins and needles spreading up my arms. Panic surged through my body, sharp and uncontrollable. "You're going to prison," though my voice trembled. "Only if you live long enough to testify," he replied. The timer on his phone ticked down to 27 minutes and 18 seconds. I realized then that this wasn't a joke. This was a countdown, and my husband was waiting for it to end. If this story hooked you already, like the video, share it with others, and subscribe to my channel for next. The next gets even more intense. At 27 minutes, my legs started to shake. I tried to hide it at first, gripping the edge of the counter so he wouldn't notice. I refused to give him the satisfaction, but my body was betraying me piece by piece. My heartbeat thudded loudly in my ears, and a cold sweat formed along my neck. "You should sit down," my husband said again, his voice almost gentle now. "Your balance will get worse." "I'm not listening to you," I snapped, though my words felt thick, as if my tongue no longer belonged to me. I took one step forward and nearly collapsed. The floor rushed up toward me, and I caught myself just in time by grabbing a chair. The room swayed like a boat on rough water. I could hear him stand, the scrape of his chair slow and deliberate. "See?" he said, right on schedule. Fear exploded in my chest. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded. "We could have talked. We could have fixed whatever this is." He shook his head. "Some things can't be fixed, especially when someone becomes a liability." A liability. That word echoed in my mind as my stomach twisted violently. I gagged, barely making it to the sink before vomiting. My vision blurred, black dots dancing in front of my eyes. He didn't move to help. Instead, he leaned against the doorway, watching as if I were a stranger. The poison affects the nervous system first, then the organs. You'll feel very tired soon. You're insane, I whispered, gripping the sink. You think you can just walk away from this? He replied, I've planned for months. By the time anyone asks questions, it'll look like a sudden illness, stress, heart failure, very common. My hands shook uncontrollably. I forced myself to think. Panic wouldn't save me. Time was slipping away, and every second mattered. I glanced toward the front door. It felt miles away. When I took another step, pain shot up my legs, sharp and electric. I cried out, collapsing onto my knees. My breath came in short, desperate gasps. The timer beeped softly. 24:02. Please, I said, my voice cracking despite myself. If there's an antidote, I won't tell anyone, I swear. He looked almost disappointed. There is one. Hope surged through me. Then give it to me, he said. I already threw it away. I didn't want to change my mind. Something inside me hardened. Through the fear, through the sickness, anger burned hot and clear. This man wasn't just trying to kill me, he was enjoying my helplessness. As he turned his back to pour himself a drink, I reached into my pocket with trembling fingers and pulled out my phone. My screen lit up. Signal bars. My heart pounded harder than the poison ever could. I didn't have much time, but I had one chance, and I was going to use it. Like this video, share it with someone who loves intense stories, and subscribe to my channel for next, because what happens next will shock you. My fingers shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. The screen blurred in and out of focus, my vision swimming as if I were underwater. I pressed my back against the cabinet, trying to steady myself, trying to breathe. Every inhale burned. Every exhale felt weaker than the last. Behind me, I could hear him in the kitchen, ice clinking in a glass as if this were any other evening, as if my life wasn't draining away by the second. I tapped the emergency number. It rang once, twice. Emergency services, what's your situation? Relief flooded me so hard it made me dizzy. My husband, I whispered, forcing the words out. He poisoned me. I think I'm dying. Ma'am, I need you to stay calm, the operator said. Where are you right now? I gave the address, stumbling over the numbers. My tongue felt thick, heavy. The floor beneath me seemed to tilt again, and I slid down until I was sitting, my knees pulled to my chest. How long ago were you poisoned? The operator asked. I glanced at the phone on the table. 22:41. About 7 minutes ago, I said. Maybe more. Footsteps approached. I looked up to see my husband standing in the doorway, his face unreadable. Who are you talking to? He asked. I pressed the phone closer to my ear. Please hurry, he's still here. The operator's voice sharpened. Ma'am, help is on the way. Do not hang up. My husband laughed softly. That won't save you. He reached out and slapped the phone from my hand. It skidded across the floor, stopping just short of the couch. The line was still open. I could hear the operator calling my name faintly. You shouldn't have done that, he said, his calm finally cracking. You're making this complicated. I crawled toward the phone, my arms trembling under my weight. Each movement sent a jolt of pain through my body. I felt weak. Too weak, but fear kept me moving. Then something strange happened. He suddenly staggered. At first, I thought he had tripped over the rug, but then he grabbed the edge of the table, his drink slipping from his hand and shattering on the floor. What's wrong? I asked, confusion cutting through the panic. His face drained of color. That's not possible, he muttered. He swayed again, breathing hard now. You didn't drink much, did you? My mind raced. The glass, dinner, the way he'd insisted on refilling it himself. We shared it, didn't we? His eyes widened in horror. You were supposed to finish it. The timer beeped. 20/000. His legs gave out, and he collapsed onto the floor across from me, his body trembling violently. Foam gathered at the corners of his mouth as he gasped for air. No, he choked. I calculated it wrong. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. I stared at him, my heart pounding, not with fear this time, but shock. The poison wasn't just inside me, it was inside him too. Like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel because the next twist changes everything. The paramedics arrived faster than I could have imagined, their sirens slicing through the quiet neighborhood. 2 men in green uniforms rushed inside, assessing the scene in seconds. My husband was on the floor, foaming at the mouth, convulsing, while I sat trembling against the kitchen counter, barely able to keep my head upright. "Stay with me, ma'am," one of the paramedics barked, grabbing my arm. "We're taking both of you to the hospital immediately." I tried to speak, tried to explain, but my throat felt raw, my words lost in a fog of panic and nausea. He was already being loaded onto the stretcher, and I could see the terror in his eyes, though he tried to mask it. This was the first time he looked like the man I had known, the frightened, vulnerable human behind the cruel mask. The ride to the hospital was a blur of flashing lights, the smell of antiseptic, and the constant beeping of monitors in my ears. I could feel my body growing weaker with every second, but somewhere deep inside, a tiny spark of hope refused to die. Maybe, just maybe, I would survive this. When we arrived, the emergency room staff moved with precision, separating us to monitor our vitals. I lay on the bed, shivering, watching as they hooked my husband to IVs and monitored his heart. The doctor, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes, came over to speak with me. "You're stable," she said, quietly but firmly. The poison was slow-acting and the dosage miscalculated. It would have been fatal under different circumstances. I blinked, my mind spinning. Miscalculated? "Yes," she nodded. "It seems he underestimated the amount he would consume. You drank less than he assumed. The poison worked as intended for him, but you absorbed a smaller dose. You're lucky, very lucky." Lucky. The word felt strange on my lips, bitter even, but it was true. I was alive, and the man who tried to end my life was lying just a few feet away, groaning in pain. For the first time, I understood the extent of his cruelty. He had planned every detail, the poison, the dosage, the cover-up, even the moment when he thought I would die helplessly at his hands. And yet, his plan had backfired spectacularly. I watched the monitors as his heart rate fluctuated dangerously. A mix of fear, anger, and disbelief swirled inside me. He had underestimated me, underestimated fate, and most importantly, underestimated the one thing he never accounted for: justice. The doctor walked away, leaving me with the realization that everything had changed in just 30 minutes. 30 minutes of terror, 30 minutes of helplessness, 30 minutes that had decided our fates, and perhaps even rewritten our future. I pressed my hands against the sheets, trying to steady my shaking body. My mind raced with questions. How could he have planned something so meticulously and still fail? What would happen when he woke up? And most importantly, what would I do next? The answer was clear. I wasn't going to let him have the upper hand again. Like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel, because what happens next in the hospital will shock you. 3 days had passed since that terrifying night. The memory of my husband collapsing haunted me like a shadow I couldn't shake. The hospital room was quiet now, almost too quiet, except for the steady beeping of the heart monitor beside me. I sat in a chair near the window, staring at the sunlight streaming in, trying to convince myself that the worst was over. The door opened quietly and a nurse stepped in. "He's awake," she said softly. My heart skipped a beat. "You should come. The doctor wants you there." I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to face him, didn't want to see the man who had tried to kill me, even if fate had turned the tables. But curiosity and unresolved anger pulled me forward. I followed her down the corridor, each step heavier than the last. He was lying in the hospital bed, hooked up to monitors and IVs. His eyes were open, but they were different. Dazed, confused. He blinked several times, focusing on the ceiling before turning toward me. For a moment, I couldn't recognize him. The man who had tried to end my life seemed smaller somehow, vulnerable. "Where am I?" His voice was weak, almost childlike. "You're in the hospital," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You survived." His brows furrowed. I poisoned her, didn't I?" I froze. His words were coming back, but his tone lacked the cruel confidence I remembered. "Yes," I said softly, careful not to let anger make my voice tremble. "But you didn't calculate it right. You ended up drinking it too." He swallowed hard, the realization dawning on him. I don't remember," he whispered, shaking his head. I thought I was going to—" "You did," I interrupted, my voice sharp but controlled. "You tried to kill me, and you almost succeeded. You wanted me gone, but you miscalculated. That's why you're alive, and why I'm alive." Tears filled his eyes. Not fear, not regret yet, just confusion. I don't understand." I took a deep breath, the anger simmering beneath my skin. "You should have thought about that before, and now you'll have to face the consequences. All of it." He looked at me for a long time, searching for something in my expression, perhaps forgiveness, perhaps mercy, but I had none to give, not now, not ever. The doctor entered, explaining his condition. The neurological damage from the poison meant he would slowly recover, but some memories, some truths might never return. In that moment, I realized the twisted irony. He had survived the poison he intended for me, yet he might never remember why I was alive and he was nearly dead. I left the hospital that day with a new understanding. Survival doesn't just mean living. Survival means using your strength to stand up against those who wish to destroy you, and ensuring they face the consequences. As I stepped into the sunlight, I felt a chill. 30 minutes. That was all it had taken for everything to change. My life, his life, our future. And the scars, both visible and invisible, would remain forever. Like this video if you felt the suspense, share it with friends who love intense, real-style stories, and subscribe to my channel because the courtroom battle is about to begin. The courtroom was silent, except for the soft shuffle of papers and the occasional cough from someone in the gallery. I sat upright in the witness chair, my hands clenched tightly in my lap. Across from me, he sat, pale and hollow-eyed, the man who had tried to poison me, now facing the full weight of the law. His presence filled the room, yet he seemed smaller somehow, broken yet dangerous. The prosecutor approached, looking at me with calm determination. "Please tell the court what happened on the night of the poisoning," he said. I swallowed hard, the memory of that night flashing vividly in my mind, the glass, the timer, the slow creeping fear, and the moment he collapsed before me. He said he poisoned me," I began, "and then he set a timer. He watched me, waiting for it to take effect. He told me the antidote was gone. I felt it, the dizziness, the nausea, the tingling. I thought I was going to die." My voice trembled, but I forced it to stay steady. Every word weighed like a hammer. The defense attorney immediately interrupted. "Objection, Your Honor. These are allegations, untested, unverified claims. The defendant has no memory of these events." I met his gaze, unwavering. "I have proof." I reached into my bag and handed the lawyer a recording. The courtroom hushed as the audio played, the sound of his voice, cold and calm, admitting to the poison, setting the timer and explaining his plan. Every word etched in stone. Gasps echoed around the room. He turned pale, trying to shrink into himself, but he couldn't hide from the truth. The judge's eyes narrowed as the recording ended. "Is there any dispute that this is your voice?" the judge asked him. He shook his head slowly. I don't remember," he whispered. "That may be true, but my life was at risk. The evidence doesn't lie. The recording proves his intent." The judge nodded, scribbling notes. The prosecutor continued, walking the jury through the events in careful detail, emphasizing the premeditation, the calculated plan, and the near-fatal outcome. I watched my husband's face, noting the slight tremor in his hands, the shame flickering behind his confusion. I realized something then. Justice wasn't just about punishment, it was about exposing the truth, making sure no one else would ever fall victim to his actions. As the session ended for the day, the judge said, "We will reconvene tomorrow for sentencing." My husband was led away, staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. I met his gaze briefly, then turned away. I didn't need to say anything. The truth had already spoken. Walking out of the courtroom, I felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. I survived. I fought back, and now the law would decide his fate. The countdown that once terrified me was over, but the real battle, the battle for justice, was just beginning. Like this video if you're hooked on the suspense, share it with friends who love intense stories, and subscribe to my channel. The shocking verdict is about to be revealed. The courtroom was packed the next morning. Reporters, neighbors, and even strangers who had heard of the poisoning case had gathered to witness the verdict. I sat in the front row, hands clasped tightly, my heart hammering in my chest. Every second felt like an eternity, every tick of the clock a reminder of the night that had almost ended my life. My husband sat across from me, his head lowered, his eyes dark and hollow. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the realization that his actions had consequences beyond his control. I couldn't tell if he fully understood the gravity of what he had done, or if he even remembered. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. All eyes turned toward the bench as he reviewed the case one last time before speaking. After reviewing the evidence, hearing the testimonies, and listening to the recording provided by the victim, this court finds the defendant guilty of attempted murder, premeditation, and financial fraud, the judge announced. A shiver ran through me. Guilty. The word resonated in the silent courtroom, heavy and final. I saw him flinch. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came. The recording had already sealed his fate. Every calculated step, every sinister word had been documented. His miscalculation of the poison had spared my life, but it had not spared him from justice. The judge continued. Given the seriousness of the crime, the court sentences the defendant to life imprisonment without parole. A low murmur swept through the gallery. My stomach twisted, not from fear this time, but from relief, satisfaction, and a strange mix of vindication. He had almost taken everything from me, but now the law had taken control. As the bailiffs led him away, he looked at me for the first time. His gaze was empty, almost pleading. "I remember now," he whispered softly, barely audible over the shuffle of feet. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. No apology could undo the terror he had caused. No words could erase the nights I had lain awake, haunted by the memory of his calm, calculated malice. For the first time in weeks, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Survival wasn't just about making it through the poisoning, it was about facing him in court, standing firm, and ensuring he could never harm me or anyone else again. Walking out of the courthouse, the sunlight felt different, warmer, brighter, almost alive. 30 minutes had once threatened to destroy my life, but those same 30 minutes had revealed my strength, my courage, and my resilience. I had stared death in the face and survived. I had stared betrayal in the face and won. The road ahead would be long, but I was ready. No fear, no poison, no lies could break me again. I had claimed my life back, and justice had been served. Like this video if you felt the suspense, share it with friends who love thrilling true-style stories, and subscribe to my channel, the emotional conclusion that ties everything together. The courtroom doors closed behind me, and for the first time in weeks, the world felt still. I stepped outside into the sunlight, taking a deep breath of freedom and relief. The air was crisp, almost electric, as if it carried away the tension, the fear, and the memories of that fateful night. 30 minutes had once threatened to end everything I had, but now they had proven something else: my strength, my resilience, and my unshakable will to survive. People passed me on the street, oblivious to the drama that had consumed my life. Cars honked, children laughed in the distance, and the ordinary chaos of the city moved on. Yet I felt a strange clarity. The world could continue its routine, but I had been reborn through fire. That night, I returned home to an empty apartment, the silence almost comforting. I sat by the window, the events of the past weeks replaying in my mind. The whispered threat, the ticking timer, the dizziness, the nausea, and the surreal moment when he collapsed before me. I thought about the recording, the court, and the verdict. Every memory reminded me of how fragile life could be, and how quickly it could change in 30 minutes. I reflected on what I had learned. Survival wasn't just about escaping danger, it was about recognizing it, facing it, and using every ounce of courage to fight back. It was about standing tall when others tried to break you, about exposing the truth even when fear gripped your heart, and most importantly, it was about reclaiming control over your life when someone tried to steal it away. At exactly 30 minutes past midnight, I found myself glancing at the clock, a small habit born from that night. It was a reminder, a silent acknowledgement that time could be deadly, but also that it could be transformative. I survived, I prevailed, and I would never forget the lessons that terror had taught me. Even now, I sometimes imagine him, the man who tried to poison me, locked away, forced to face the consequences of his actions every single day. Justice had been served, but the scars remained, invisible to the world, yet etched deep in my memory. I had learned that betrayal could come from the closest person, but so could strength. Life returned to a sense of normalcy, but with an edge of vigilance, a sharpened awareness that nothing should ever be taken for granted. I had stared death in the face and lived to tell the tale. And now, more than ever, I understood the power of resilience, courage, and the human spirit. 30 minutes had once seemed like an eternity of terror, but now 30 minutes had changed everything: my perspective, my life, and the very definition of survival. Like this video if this story kept you on the edge of your seat, share it with friends who love thrilling and suspenseful tales, and subscribe to my channel for more real-style stories that will leave you speechless.